Well, it's the Hopcast.
This dude is crazy. This dude is crazy.
Welcome back to
Near Post. 101.
but.
You're a dickhead.
Yeah.
Absolute dickhead.
Oh man, it's good to be back, man.
Yes, sir.
Love the Near Post.
Yes, sir.
Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share. Everything.
It's gonna be down here somewhere.
That's it. I mean,
like here.
I don't know if it's walking along or it's bouncing.
Yeah, we're gonna put something there. I want to talk to you about a subject that is quite interesting with like a lot of the different managers that's in the Premier League now and their ways of handling certain situations with their players and so on and so forth. Man management.
Yeah.
To you, the years you've been watching football and playing football, I'm sure you've had like coaches over your time and stuff like that. I've had coaches I played for or whatever. How important was man management to you in terms of like the professional game and things of that nature?
It's crucial. It's crucial. I think for me, looking at the teams that I've played in, no matter what the level is, you've got a lot of different types of players.
Right.
You've got players that they've got a bit of more mental strength, a bit more of a mental fortitude where the coaches say, fucking hell, pick up the slack, or come on, mate, and he will get a tune out of you. But or you have the players that couldn't kind of take that tough love. You got to be like, come on, you can do it. You know, them type of players. And it was just interesting to see that some managers just wasn't like their style was their style. If they were giving you tough love, they were giving everybody tough love.
Right.
And whoever swam, whoever drowned. That was it. If you don't like it, you're not in my team, sort of thing. In comparison, and there was those that were softer, saying, "All right, don't worry, Blads, unlucky, we go again." And it's like they would try to put an arm around everyone, and some players were just like, maybe you're a bit too soft. Yeah,
some players take like weakness, kindness for weakness,
and they don't. Then there's a lack of respect. Sort of thing. So it was interesting seeing that growing up or being in the different teams that I played in. I personally, as a central midfielder or an attacking midfielder when I was younger, I personally needed probably a bit of both sometimes, I think. The tough love was there, and I would be like, all right, Kels, you need to get it together. Your first touches was poor. Things were not turning out for you, and your manager's like, what's going on? Sort it out. And I'm like, I need to sort it out because my teammates are looking at me and relying on me. I need to sort it out. But then there were times where I needed it's all right, it's coming. Right. Keep it going. It's coming. Go again. And I needed that type of love. So for me, having good man management skills is having the balance of both. And knowing your squad or knowing your individuals. To understand what they need to thrive at their level, at their optimum, at their maximum. And that doesn't just go with football, that goes in anything you do. 100%. You got to know the strengths and weaknesses of your team, your individuals, and know what best to galvanize them. And
I think also you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Correct.
You know, so I think it comes down to knowing who that is, what that is, and all that type of stuff, or whatever your weaknesses are as a team. I think at the highest level, it's quite interesting because obviously you have managers like Fergie and Wenger didn't have to deal with social media.
It's a huge factor.
I think it's the biggest in today's modern day football. I think I'd love to see how they would fare. I don't think the hair dryer treatment will go down too well in today's dressing rooms. I think there's a little caveat to it. I think in some
go down well then because
because you got to breathe like.
Are we talking about the hair dryer treatment as in its general time? Or are we talking about that specific time where Sir Alex Ferguson?
I think it's more so the time because I think as you were talking about different types of man management skills. You gotta I don't think it works in today's footballer with today's footballer. I think you look at today's footballer, I think they are a little bit more softer in nature.
Okay.
And that's not to take they're men at the end of the day. I'm not trying to be disrespectful towards any of them, but just I think that, I think the last manager from that era was probably Jose who kind of wants a player he can kind of berate and get a tune out of because he's getting at them or whatever. He could say something that he might not say anything in like an angry tone, but he says something in a certain way that he thinks might galvanize you and get you going.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think as a manager, you just got to be like a guru almost. You have to kind of like you said, know what gets what player. You got 25 guys.
Yeah.
For the most part, let's say 25 of that 5 ain't going to really see pitch at any given point. But the rest of them will get minutes at some point or another. And imagine you're bringing a guy out from the cold who's kind of just been on the bench or not in the squad, and you need to get something out of him. You kind of got to know what makes him tick.
So if we look at, all right, so let's take Mourinho, for example. Obviously, one of the latest cases that probably started with him, or maybe even
just before him, yeah.
In Dele Ali, would you say that Mourinho and his style of management, or him failing to manage Dele Ali, would,
I'm not going to say he failed.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a little harsh because he walked into a situation and maybe Dele Ali was already going that way. I think how you handle things
as a manager, is it your job to get the best, no matter what was happening previously? Isn't it your job to get the best out of players, as I obviously, as we've seen?
I think it's interesting in one breath you say,
we'll get there.
Yeah, I think in one breath it's interesting you say, like, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jose said something along the lines of, Fergie kept telling me to sign Dele Ali when I was at Manchester United. And then the player he inherited when he got there not being, I mean, he started well, but it just didn't continue to go that way. I think mental health plays a big part in this as well. I think it's good to have a manager who probably has some sort of like degree in psychology or something like that, or just knows about it, or is very well versed in it. I think the problem is that when you look at Dele Ali's situation, or even a Jadon Sancho's current, more recent situation, it's different ways of handling different players, and you got to know what's going to get the best out of that specific player in that specific time when you need them in that game or in that moment or whatever the case may be. Some players don't need it at all, I think. I think you get those players out there like a Zlatan who just probably like believes wholeheartedly in himself no matter what. So it's just like, I don't need you to pat me on the back, buddy.
Different mental structure.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't need you to pat me on the back. I'm Zlatan. I'm one of the greats, you know. Up until recently, I didn't think Ronaldo needed it. You know, but how his situation ended.
I think as he became more vulnerable.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I would say.
That's probably when the need for it more
came.
There.
Yeah,
I think the sense of belonging.
I think the wanting to be loved.
Yeah,
and I think the needing to be loved and to be accepted at a level, because I think when you think about like the biggest personalities, there's going to be some frailty in them.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like with Ronaldo, he's such like, he's, you know, Ronaldo's Latin, these type of players, there's such big personalities and egos and things of that nature, because you can't be great without one.
Yeah.
And I believe that firmly. You reach greatness through an attitude.
Yeah. And
I think that they have such strong attitudes, even Messi, just in a different way. And I feel like it's interesting because if you look at how Ronaldo's situation at United ended, history is going to tell a story that says Ten Hag handled that perfectly, right? Maybe in a couple years' time, maybe Ten Hag will look back on that and think, maybe I could have done something different there.
Yeah.
Who knows? I think when you look at the Dele Ali situation, could he have been saved? Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it.
Can he still be saved?
No. I think in any profession, you start to fall out of love with what you do.
Yeah.
And when you do, it's going to be very hard to get it back.
Yeah.
It's different paying bills versus being happy to go do what you do.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes people just go to work because they have to.
Yeah.
Some people go because they want to go to work. They want to be around the colleagues. They want to see their friends. They want to, you know, do all that stuff. There's nothing, it doesn't have anything to do with the money anymore.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you can get caught up, and I think he definitely got caught up, Dele Ali, and I think management would have helped him at the time. Talking about like the Sancho situation, or it's no longer, I guess, a situation where he's back training and all that type of stuff. But I think that's the perfect example of a manager seeing something not being right and saying, you know what, although it's foreign to us, I'm going to take this guy out of the firing line altogether. Okay. Away from everything altogether. And yeah, I'm going to have to tell the truth at the end of the day, because if I don't, it's going to come out and be something else that I don't need it to be. It's going to be more of a circus. But I'm going to take him out the fire line altogether. I'm going to put him into a place where he only has to focus on him. I don't know. We don't know what Jadon Sancho, which the same way we don't know what Dele Ali's situation was. So one day it might come out and he might be like, oh, that could have been handled better or that could have been easier or whatever. But for right now, I feel like man management plays such a big part, more so than it did under Fergie and Wenger, because the mental side of football is actually being discussed more. Okay. And the pressures that come along with that, and the social media and all that type of stuff.
All right, I hear you. So before we even get to Ten Hag, and even Jadon Sancho, looking at Mourinho, on the outside looking in, you will see a manager that wins, knows how to win, has won wherever he's gone. See, except from Tottenham.
He didn't win at Tottenham.
He won with Roma.
Yeah, he won with Roma. Yeah.
Europa Conference League, be it where it may, he's won.
Hey, trophy's a trophy sometimes,
But there's a constant thing about his man management style, or this. I don't know if it's a myth, or there's something about his man management style that we say Mourinho's not a great man manager.
I watched I'm gonna watch the rest of it. I watched a bit of a Jesse Lingard interview that just came out, and he was saying how Jose, when he's at United, would just call him on a random and like, "Hey, what are you doing? Where you at?" He'd answer him and he'd be like, "Oh, where's Marcus? Where's this? What's going on? Oh, he's cool. He's at home. Whatever. All right, cool. All right, talk to you later." And to Jesse, that was enough. Sometimes you don't need much. You got to remember that everyone's under pressure, right? So managers under pressure to get you guys to perform. You guys under pressure to perform. So I guess in some cases, people will look from the outside looking in and think Jose's an asshole. And everyone's an asshole, but it just depends what type of brand of asshole you are for people to get along with you and be like, all right, cool, I like that guy. Because you might be like, I hate this motherfucker, but he gets the best out of me.
Yeah.
And I think in most cases, you'll have a lot of players say that about Jose or many managers, doesn't matter who it is. People are always going to feel like things can be handled differently or better or more suited to it. I mean, if you watch the documentary, the Tom documentary, you saw Danny Rose's interaction with Jose. Some people might look at Jose and say that was an asshole way to handle that.
Paul Pogba.
Asshole way to handle it. Yeah. I think that was an asshole way to do that. I don't know what was, but Jose probably looked at it as like, I need to test him. I need to test his heart and see what he's really about.
Luke Shaw.
But look what Luke Shaw is now. Can he actually blame Jose? Because you got to think about it. I'm not saying Jose Mourinho is perfect. Nobody is. But if Jose doesn't do what he does, Luke Shaw as tough as he is now, because I'm sure he's more tough mentally now than he was before.
But then is there a caveat to the type of personality that we need Jose Mourinho to be, where he was publicly talking about other managers, he publicly talks about his players when they don't do what he wants and things are not going well for him. And
but that's the
called Wenger a specialist in failure.
Yeah, but remember, calling Wenger a specialist in failure at that particular moment was almost a masterstroke, because I think they played you afterwards.
Yes,
and then it might have mentally.
This is what I was
hurt Arsenal.
So does that mean that the caveat to how Mourinho is as a person, instead of like how Wenger was as a person, where he was known as a great man manager, but not necessarily got the side where you've got to be mentally strong to test those characters and do these things that Mourinho was doing to certain players to test their mental strength or get the best out of them on the pitch?
I think
mentally.
I think my answer to you as a whole is you can't fight angry, right? So I think if Jose pokes at Wenger and Wenger gets upset, he's fighting angry now. So tactically, everything it's thrown off. Why is he saying that about me? Why is he this guy? Even maybe riling them up on the touchline and they got into that little arm pushing weird shove thing. Yeah. I remember when Wenger got into it with Alan Pardew. Yeah. So Arteta against Liverpool, was that last season?
Yeah.
You rile them up and then they come and destroy you, and then it's like, oh, I can't do that. So you just got to know who you're dealing with. I think Jose had his number. Unfortunately for Arsenal, that's just the way that was. I don't think they have like a great hate for each other like that. I think it's just there's a what's the word I'm looking for? There's a professional respect. Okay, they're probably not best friends, but it's just professional respect. Yeah. But I think he knew I can get under his skin.
But that's what I'm trying to say is that mentality that Mourinho had. Did that contribute to why he was
so successful? Yes. I think in that era it works.
To the Wenger era where he was not to say Wenger wasn't a successful manager,
but at that era, it just wasn't.
Era of that he wasn't winning and he wasn't successful, and maybe he was being a bit too nice. And that man management side of him, where you got your arm around everybody instead of giving them the tough love and giving them that mental strength, did that play a part in Wenger's downfall? Because it seemed that Arsenal team, anytime they came up against top quality opposition or someone that had a bit more mental strength, or the word that we like to throw around right now, the mentality monsters of that time, they crumbled.
I think...
And they crumbled bad.
But I think there was, again, without going off topic, I think that there were so many different nuances to why Arsenal weren't successful at the time. I think Wenger was kind of left in the lurch with signings and things of that nature, so he had to understand the group he had. I think understanding the group he had to mean that he had to also understand that maybe they weren't built the same way as the Vieiras and Ray Parlers and Henrys and all these kind of guys. And I think at one time, Henry came and trained with you guys, was doing his coaching badge or something like that, and Wenger had to like kind of dial it back with him and say, hey man, like you're being too... And I think that's just more so because Wenger understood that maybe he didn't have mentality monsters and he had to keep the group happy and loved because that's the way they performed. Obviously, I don't know, I never worked for Arsenal, but I would imagine that you could see that there was a mental block when it came to that last hurdle.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and at that time. Now you don't see that so much. And that's probably because Arteta can be a little bit more risque with the way he handles things.
So before we talk about Arteta and Ten Hag and Graham Potter now and Klopp and Pep.
Yeah.
Before we go to there, like because we're talking about Mourinho and Wenger, what's Sir Alex?
Again, it wouldn't work.
He was known as
he's the Godfather,
man manager.
Yeah, I think that
Roy Keane disagrees, but
again, and I said this to you earlier. I think before I get on to Roy Keane, if you're losing a game or things ain't going your way, you have to be this way.
Yeah,
you have to get the guys up. You got it. But then you had constant professionals and guys who knew what it was to win and the levels they had to be at. So you probably didn't have to do too much. Yeah. Sometimes it had to be done. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes I've heard stories of Fergie just walking in the dressing room and just standing there, and it was enough, and the team go out and win. I've heard stories of Fergie going there and say, "It's only Spurs, guys. What the hell are we doing?" And go out and they win. So you have to handle it different. Do I think it works now? No. I just don't think he's going to get a tune out of today's footballer. It just doesn't. For me, I could be wrong, but for me, I just don't think he's going to get the same result. I think footballers nowadays, because of player power and things of that nature, are going to be like, "Oh, get rid of this guy."
I strongly believe that man management is important.
Yeah.
No matter what, you cannot have a successful business if your staff are not happy.
Oh, 100%. But you can't keep your staff happy at the risk of losing business.
Correct. This is what I'm getting at.
Right.
So, looking at that, do we say, all right, you know what? Fergie was a great man manager because he was successful for so long that you cannot be a bad man manager or be bad at man management and be successful at the same time. The two cannot.
Right. No, I don't think you can be bad manager and achieve success unless the people that work underneath you don't give a damn about you and they are going to do their job to the fullest amount. But how many times have we seen that work? Yeah. So if you look at talking about the Roy Keane thing, Roy Keane might not like Ferguson. He might not like how he did things, but it pushed Roy Keane to be where he is and who he was.
Like Gary Pallister and them.
Yeah, and all that type of stuff. But without Fergie identifying his talent, without Fergie wanting to bring him to Manchester United and making him a treble winner and making him multiple time Premier League winner and winning and being the captain of Manchester United, understanding what it is to put that shirt on, that all comes from Fergie. So you might not like the man who dawned you with this stuff, but at the same time, he pushed you to your absolute best. Because it's not like he left Manchester United and ripped it up somewhere else. So obviously there's some sort of correlation with Fergie and Roy Keane, even if professionally they don't like each other or professionally it doesn't work. There was something that, and maybe Roy Keane be like, no, it's all me. I pushed myself. I did. But without Fergie, are you that guy?
Can I just do a quick digress a bit internationally? I'm thinking back to people like Frank Rijkaard. Or even people when Romario was playing for Barcelona. And he's done stuff like, he said, all right, boss,
I'm going to go away and go to parties and stuff. Yeah.
And his manager said to me, I can't remember if it was Rijkaard, but...
no, it wasn't. If it was Romario, it was Rijkaard. It was Ronaldinho if it's Rijkaard.
Yeah, you're going to get to Ronaldinho, but...
Yeah. I mean, Ronaldinho didn't even show up to training a lot from what people say, and he kind of did his own,
Yeah. So I think the Romario story is that he scored 2 and then went off at halftime and then took the next plane to
Yeah. He said, if you score a brace or something like that.
Yeah. But we fast forward to like Ronaldinho, for example, where Ronaldinho was back and forth to Brazil, but still performing at a high level. What about that style of management?
I think it's like maverick talent. You got to kind of let maverick talent do what maverick talent does. At the risk, if you're not walking the line correctly, at the risk of upsetting the others.
Yeah. You can upset the balance because you're favoritizing.
But then they've got to believe, but in that particular situation, they're all going to believe that Ronaldinho's a god. He's just the guy, and it's okay for him to go and party and do whatever and show up to training late or not show up to training at all, or because on Sunday he puts it in. That mentality was different. I mean, we just saw Marcus Rashford just miss a meeting, and then wasn't in the first half of the game against Wolves.
But then, can you say then, which is another option?
I'm talking mentality. I'm not talking obviously the players are the same.
Yeah, of course. So, can you say then that maybe Rijkaard won the Champions League, Rijkaard won the Liga. If I remember rightly.
He won the league. I think. Yeah.
Would you say that Ronaldinho was managed correctly or was he mismanaged? Because
I think it was mismanaged.
Someone could say that maybe if he had a stronger manager, that the longevity of his career, especially even at Barcelona when he was at his peak, would have been longer.
Let's look at it this way. When Ronaldinho left PSG, he was touted to go to United, right? Fergie's manager at United. So footballers know footballers. You can make a phone call or whatever. I would imagine that he would know what he can and cannot get away with in Manchester. And it's cold and all that other stuff that compiles onto that. There's no way Fergie's letting you go to Brazil for a carnival or anything like that. Fergie had taps on everybody. So it's like he knew everybody. People call him, Rio's out at this club, or this is, these players talk about that stuff. I think, not saying he chose Barca so he can get away with shit. I don't think that's the case, but I think in the back of his mind, he would have known that there's probably more of a looser culture there than there would be at Manchester United. And that plays some factor in his choosing or whatever. But again, we're talking about one of the greatest players to ever live. And, when you want to, I think when you want to set a culture at a club, nobody's above the hair dry treatment or reproach. You just can't be, you can't let players miss meetings and then let them play, but then ban other players or whatever when they miss meetings. You know what I'm saying? It just creates a divide. So I believe that, again, Xavi and all those players there at the time probably didn't give a shit that Ronaldinho wasn't coming to train and all that stuff. They probably at first, because it's human nature, probably be like, oh, for fuck's sake, this guy. But then when you show up on a Saturday or Sunday and you
bag a hat trick in the El Clasico.
I mean, I'm not saying I like that mentality, but I'm not saying I like that mentality. I'm just saying that they probably just said, fuck it. Look what he does. Who cares? But you can tell when the newer generation of managers came through, when Pep came through at Barcelona, at that point, it was like Ronaldinho had to go. He kept Eto'o and Henry for a couple seasons, I think it was, and then they both had to be moved on. And it's about mentality. I gotta, and this is what Arteta's going through now. It's about having young players you can get them on side.
So knowing Pep, because if you're saying because I would believe that's probably when that mentality started to come in, because Pep was the new age manager at that time.
I think it started with Mourinho. I think Mourinho didn't stand for any shit.
Yeah.
I think when Pep came in, he had everyone's gonna have their way of doing things.
Yeah.
So I believe that Pep came in and was just like, look, you know what? I like this style of football.
Yeah.
These are my non-negotiables, so on and so forth. And every manager should have that. I think the problem is not the problem. I think the thing with it's just style of how you go about doing it.
Yeah.
I can be subtle about it. I mean, I've heard stories of John Terry saying that if a player was injured at Chelsea when Mourinho was there, he'd just walk up and not even look at the player. He'd just talk to the physio.
Yeah.
And he's like, how long? Physio would say, whatever. All right, cool. He'd walk away. He wouldn't, all right, buddy. He wouldn't do none of that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that kind of galvanizes you a little bit maybe for the stronger-minded people. For the weaker-minded people, it might be a little bit like, oh, this guy don't care about me.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the individual. And I think you know who to do it to and who not to do it to. I mean, Pep got rid of Zlatan after a season. Or midway through this, I think he went on loan or something like that. So you got to think if it's just not working, I'm not going to let a disease, as far as I'm concerned, stay in my club. Not calling Zlatan a disease, but I'm sure Pep saw him as something that wasn't going to work and just said he has to go for whatever reason. There are managers like Jose, like Pep, like now we see with Ten Hag, Arteta, my way or the highway. And I believe for a club to be successful, it has to be that way.
So do you think that now with these type of managers like Arteta, Klopp
as well, yes.
Ten Hag,
yeah,
and even probably going down a bit, maybe like your De Zerbis and all them type of managers that we're now seeing that my way or the highway era that may bring back a certain mental fortitude to the players that may be not there at the moment?
At that point, it's a bit harder because it's like club by club basis.
Yeah.
So I think the average manager stays 3 years and then now they get sacked or they leave or whatever. So I don't know whether or not you're kind of like building a foundation if you're like Arteta or if you're Ten Hag. Klopp and Pep would have already done that now. They're far into the process of what their clubs are and what they're going to turn out to be. But these other De Zerbis, they're like, you just got there, so you don't know how long you're going to be there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you got to do as much as you can in such a interesting amount of time.
Do you know what? Looking at that, and obviously we're going to wrap up on the man management, but
yeah.
I look at Graham Potter, for example, and I see a manager that is, do you know what? I'm a very firm believer is that a manager's personality transmits through the team. Through the team.
Yeah.
I look at Potter and I think you play great football, but he comes across as just a bit of a nice guy. Where you're now your more experienced players at Chelsea, your Sterlings, your
I saw him get a little bitchy the other day about questions he was being asked. But I saw a little fight in him, but I guess at the hazard of not knowing the person, you can only look at what they show you on a week-by-week basis, especially in football. I think the problem at Chelsea is not so much I think the last manager, let's 2 managers, let's say, at Chelsea to kind of get their way or their points across or their ideas were Conte and Jose. And they both didn't last the whole tenure.
That was Abramovich.
Right. That was his. But it's the same thing here now. I mean, Tuchel probably shouldn't have been sacked. So, but I mean, words got him sacked probably, interview that he did. But Potter is in a no-win situation. There's no win for him. Because effectively, are they his signings? Probably not. Are the players going to listen to him? Probably not. You can clearly see it's disjointed. And you can see that it's hard to kind of see where that bit of spark or win is going to come from or whatever. So at this point in time, I think he's unfortunately one of the weaker managers mentally, but how the team, that you said, your mentality breathes through the team, how the team play, how they go about doing things, how they go about setting up things, all that stuff is very important. Yeah. And I just don't think that he's that guy right now.
So saying that, just to end off, what is a good manager to you, and what is my great man management to you then?
I think great man management, first and foremost, taking a bit from Fergie, is probably just trying to familiarize yourself with all your players. That's number one. Number two would be you don't have to go to Fergie's thing. I mean, I've heard stories of Fergie knowing all the players' family names and all that type of stuff and doing extras. I think Rio Ferdinand's granddad was sick one time, and Fergie knew what type of whiskey he likes and what type of flowers and all the type of stuff he likes and stuff, and made sure it was sent to the hospital way before any of Rio Ferdinand's family could do anything. At the time, you hear stories like that and you're like, whoa, so you're not only just doing the pitch stuff and the training, you're like invested, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that, I don't think you have to be to that level. That's extra special, but I think you have to be to the level to know what your players need at all times. And I think the third thing, and probably the most important thing, is you got to be able to stick to your principles. Once a manager goes against his own principles or integrity, you might as well write your own resignation and say, I'm out of here. Because that's it. The players are going to see what you're doing and say, oh, there's one rule for you, different rule for us. Right. And that's the mentality of today, and you're seeing that with Ten Hag, you're seeing that with Arteta, the non-negotiables, which is so important, in the integrity and their decision-making and things of that nature. And history will smile fondly on those who made those decisions, the tough ones, and ultimately won trophies and got the team to where they need to be.
Your Aubameyang.
Yeah, these are tough decisions, man, because Aubameyang's a goal scorer at the time, but you can't just run the roost here. Ronaldo's Ronaldo. I don't think we can name a player that Ten Hag's dealt with that is on Ronaldo's status. So imagine the fact that, now you're walking into one of the biggest commercial clubs in the world, and I say commercial, not footballing, because that's what it is at Manchester United. So you're dealing with probably one of the biggest entities in football of all time. More followers than most clubs on Instagram and things like that. All this stuff is pressure. Yeah. It's hard to deal with, and it could go left. But that also comes from the club backing you as well. Your management skills are what the club is going to allow you to get away with. Hey. So I think he dealt with that well. I think Arteta dealt with Aubameyang well, and you can see the fruits of that now. Arsenal doing really well. Potter, if he's still there in the summer or next week, we'll see. Yeah. We'll see if he can get his identity through the club. But Pep and Klopp are too far ahead, in terms of the foundations of mentality and all that type of stuff. Liverpool are struggling right now. City are doing what City do. We'll see if they win tonight, but yeah.
Hey. Well, each and every time, this was the Near Post Podcast. Zeke, what do we want them to do?
You gotta like, you gotta comment, you gotta subscribe, you gotta share it, you gotta talk about it, you gotta go home tonight. And when you go home tonight, you're gonna kiss your wife, you're gonna talk to your kids for a little bit, then you're going on YouTube and you're gonna go to the Near Post Podcast and you're gonna watch all our content. You're gonna comment on all the videos.
That's right.
And you're gonna like all the videos. And if you don't like the videos, put the thumbs down too. I'm good with the bad comments. But make sure you feel something.
We've also got TikTok and Instagram.
Oh man, social media, man. I'm always commenting on the social media stuff. I find that shit hilarious.
We love you guys. This is the Near Post Podcast.